Wah! Holy cow! The second I entered the temple, shrill cries of children echoed off the walls and made my head hurt. I froze in place, but Lutz pulled me forward. There's still steps, watch your feet. Behind us, gray-robed priests closed the heavy doors with a creak. Then a blue-robed priest held up a bell with a strangely colored stone and rang it. Instantly, every child fell silent. What happened? Lutz whispered, or tried to speak normally, but only a whisper came out. He grabbed his throat in surprise. Maybe it's a magic tool? It happened the second he rang the bell. My voice was barely audible too, but I was calm since I'd seen the cause. Once I explained, Lutz settled down. I looked up in awe. The ceiling soared 4 stories high like an atrium, with rows of round pillars carved in complex designs. Light streamed through tall, narrow windows. Everything was white stone and gold. No paintings, no stained glass. It didn't resemble any religious architecture I knew from Earth. The furthest wall was covered in colored designs from floor to ceiling, with a staircase of about 40 steps leading up to it. At the top sat 2 statues, a male god wearing a black cape scattered with golden stars, and a goddess wearing a crown with long pointed tips like sunlight radiating in all directions. Below them, a peaceful, plump woman embraced a gleaming yellow grail. Further down, a woman with a staff, a man with a spear, a woman with a shield, a man with a sword, all pure white except for their one colored object. It reminded me of Doll's Day. Myne, don't daydream, we gotta keep walking. The procession moved slowly forward. On either side of us, thick red carpets with desks along the inner wall where blue-robed priests performed some ritual. Lutz peered ahead and let out a quiet "Geh." They're doing the blood seal stuff you hate. Everyone's pressing their blood on something. I wanted to flee, but Lutz held my hand tight. Give it up. This must be for citizenship registration. Why do magic tools like blood so much? I quivered in fear as I watched a curt-looking priest poke a needle into a kid's finger and press it against a white metal. The kid opened his mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Next, come forward. A priest at an empty desk called me over. Lutz pushed me from behind. The blue-robed priest narrowed his eyes, glanced over me, then held out his hand. Raise your palm. We'll draw blood, but it won't hurt much. Nobody who ever said that was telling the truth. The needle's sharp pain shot through my finger like touching a burning pan. But this priest was gentler than the mean one I'd watched. He handed me the metal instead of forcing my finger against it. It struck me that the silence-inducing magic tool probably existed not to muffle small talk, but to muffle kids crying out in pain. A young gray-robed priest guided us to sit on the carpet. The blue priests finished registering everyone, packed the medals into a box, and left. Gray priests replaced the desks with an extravagant podium, then lined up by the walls like teachers watching assembly. The high bishop enters. A blue priest waved a rod, bells filled the air, and an older man in a white robe with golden sash and blue embroidery walked to the podium. He placed something on it. Wait, is that a book? I rubbed my eyes. He started flipping pages. Definitely a book. Leather-bound, metal clasps on the corners, a gemstone in the cover. Lutz, a book. They have a book. Where? What kind? Right there. The High Bishop is turning its pages. That's a book. Looks super expensive. Nothing like the ones you make. Don't compare them. That's like comparing the statue's sword to your knife. Actually, it made perfect sense for books to be here. Religious institutions kept Bibles, scriptures, sutras. The church had historically been the forefront of academic advancement. I didn't have to struggle making books and crushing poverty. Books already existed. I should have come to the temple sooner. I'm so dumb. I could have read books without all that struggling. Lutz shrugged. Kids aren't allowed in the temple before baptism. The guards would have turned you away. The High Bishop congratulated us on our citizenship and began reading from the Bible, creation myths told in simple language for children. The god of darkness lived alone for eons, then met the goddess of sunlight. They married and had children, the goddess of water, the god of fire, the goddess of wind, and the goddess of earth. In the process, the world was created. Then came the seasonal myth. The god of life fell in love with the goddess of earth and asked her father, the god of darkness, for her hand. But he was far too possessive. He froze her in ice and snow to keep her for himself, stealing her power. That was winter. The goddess of sunlight melted the ice. The goddess of water washed away the weakened god of life. Spring came as the goddesses gave strength to the seeds. Summer was the god of fire, helping those lives grow. When the god of life returned seeking the goddess of earth, the goddess of wind combined their powers to harvest the crops. Autumn. Then the cycle repeated endlessly. Since Lutz and I were summer-born, our patron deity was the god of fire, characterized by passion and favoring those who teach and guide others. Why are you liking this so much? Everything about it's fun. The high bishop closed the book and stood before us to teach us how to pray. Praise be to the gods. He spread his arms to the sky, lifted his left knee, and looked upward. I slapped a hand over my mouth. That's the Glauco man pose. Why? The old man held perfect balance, which made it funnier. I held my stomach and my sides ached. Glory be to the gods. He fluidly shifted from the pose to genuflecting on the ground. Some laughter burst out. Fine? You feeling sick? I'm fine. This is a trial the gods have given me. Only someone who recognized the Glauco man pose would find this so funny. I managed to calm down by reminding myself that different religions' prayers always look silly from outside. Now then, children, please stand. We shall pray together. Together? I stood with everyone else, sides aching. Praise be to the gods. The high bishop repeated the pose. Bearable. But then 10 blue priests simultaneously lifted their legs in perfect formation. Praise be to the gods. The angle of their arms, the height of their knees, their blank expressions. My stomach muscles gave in. I fell down. I held my mouth shut as tears formed. Then Lutz hopped over to me on one foot while maintaining the pose. That finished me off. I pounded the floor in silent laughter. I can't breathe. A gray priest noticed. Lutz explained I was sickly and had gotten too excited. The priest carried me to a medical room while I internally retired from the ceremony. They took me to a well-furnished room, clearly meant for wealthy visitors, not poor commoners. My fancy baptism outfit and special hairpin must have made me look about as wealthy as Frida. I didn't correct them. The gray priest smoothly removed my hairpin and shoes, made the bed, and Princess carried me onto it before I could even react. He felt more like a trained servant than a priest, like you fussing over me at Frida's house. It is not good to lie before the gods. But I'm not lying. He left. I lay there thinking of an excuse for my family. I couldn't tell them I'd laughed too hard. That would make Lutz mad too. But thinking about Lutz doing the Glauco man pose made me laugh again. My strength slowly returned, but I needed the bathroom. There was a chamber pot, but no water to clean up, and no bell to call anyone. This room was clearly meant for people with servants. I had to go find someone myself. I slid off the bed, put on my shoes, and escaped. I got lost in the white hallways. The statues and reliefs grew increasingly fancy. I'd wandered into a noble zone. Blood drained from my face. I spun around to speed walk back, but footsteps approached. A female priest with tightly bound hair found me. Who are you? What are you doing here? I apologized for trespassing and explained about the medical room. She sighed wearily and said she'd take me back to the chapel after finishing some business one room away. She pushed open a door. The hinges gave a long, low groan. The sound of wood that had been resting shut for years, thick and heavy, the kind of door that didn't open for just anyone. The groan faded. Then, nothing. Complete silence, so sudden and total it pressed against my ears like a physical thing. Every sound from the hallway, the distant murmur of priests, the shuffle of sandals on stone, cut off the moment the door swung inward. Whatever was in this room, it had been sealed away from the rest of the world. I looked inside and froze. Is this a library? The walls were covered in bookshelves. Most shelves held wooden boards and loose papers, with locked cabinets for precious books. 2 long slanted desks sat in the middle with benches for 5, and on them 6 thick books chained in place. It's a chained library. My lifelong dream from my Urano days, to visit a foreign library with centuries of history. Warm tears spilled down my face. I've never seen one of these before. Not just my first chained library, my first collection of books large enough to be called a library. Praise be to the gods. Glory be to the gods. I made the Glauco man pose and genuflected in gratitude, shaky on one leg but overflowing with sincerity. I wiped my face and hands, then stepped forward to enter paradise. My face slammed into something invisible. I was seeing stars. An invisible wall blocked the doorway completely. I pounded it, but it didn't budge. Come on, let me in. I want inside too. Tears dripped from my face. Books were right there, but I couldn't touch them. The shrine maiden returned with documents. Only those given special permission within the temple may enter. Hope blazed. How can I join the temple? The simplest way would be to become an apprentice shrine maiden. Where is the high bishop? She sighed in defeat and took me to him. I stood outside his extravagant door, checking myself. Part of my outfit was stiff with dried tears and snot. My name is Myne. I want to be an apprentice shrine maiden. I beg for your permission. Why? Because there's a room with books here. His eyes widened. You can read? Yes. I would like to spend the rest of my life reading the books here. He sighed and rubbed his temples. This temple is a place of worship, not a library. That Bible you read is basically a god to me. I want to read about the gods until I die. He asked about my affiliations and situation. I summarized everything: the Merchants Guild, the Myne Workshop, my products and earnings. His impressed smile told me my pitch had worked. When I offered to donate up to 1 large gold, his jaw dropped and spit flew from his mouth. The shrine maiden's hand went over her mouth. A large gold? Is that too much? I can pay less. His eyes turned serious. He said he'd negotiate with the guildmaster on my behalf to let me keep my guild registration. Then he offered to let me read his Bible in his room. The book room was still off limits. Really, praise be to the gods. I made the glaucoman pose and felt my body tilt. The devouring heat began ramping up. Without Lutz to hold me back, I'd gotten too excited. It started in my chest, not pain exactly, but pressure, like something too large trying to fit inside something too small. Then heat, spreading outward from the center, up through my throat, down my arms to my fingertips, into my legs, until even my feet felt like they were glowing from the inside. The air around me thickened. I could feel it, actually feel it pressing back against my skin, like standing too close to an open oven, except the oven was me. My vision shimmered at the edges. The stone walls seemed to breathe, and through it all, a faint hum at the base of my skull, rising in pitch, getting louder with every heartbeat. Then my body gave up trying to hold it. My knees buckled. I've really done it now. I fell over sideways and stopped moving. The shrine maiden watched over me in the medical room this time, and I was forced to use the bathroom with her present. So embarrassing, I almost cried. When Lutz arrived, "What did you do, Myne?" I went looking for water and collapsed. That can't be everything. Spit it all out. I found a book room, a paradise given to us by the gods, a room full of books. Ah, I can guess the rest. The shrine maiden added, she forced her way into a meeting with the high bishop. Lutz pinched my cheeks. Dad was waiting outside the temple. Lutz carried me on his back, then I transferred to Dad. On the way home, Lutz split off to sign his apprentice contract at the Gilberta Company. I waved goodbye from Dad's back. At home, I told Dad I wanted to be an apprentice shrine maiden. He slammed his cup against the table. Don't joke around. Only orphans become shrine maidens. I didn't understand his fury. He explained, orphans with no parents or guardians had no choice but to join the temple. Shrine maidens lived there, doing hard labor. Mom calmed him down. Why would you want to be a shrine maiden, Myne? I explained. The fancy room, getting lost in the noble zone, finding the book room. Dad nodded at each point, then asked the hardest question. Which do you want more, cutting off your family to read books or keeping on living with us? My head went white. Tuli held my hand, tears in her eyes. You promised to stay with us. Do you want books that much? No, I just want to read what I saw. I don't want to be a shrine maiden. I just want in that room. Dad hugged me tight. I'm not handing you over to the temple. He said it simply, without raising his voice, and that was somehow worse than shouting. His arms didn't loosen. I could feel the tension in them. Not anger at me, but the taut, controlled force of someone who had already made a decision and wasn't looking for a debate. You're my daughter, he said, quieter now, into the top of my head. Not a tool for some bishop's ceremony. Not an offering. Mine. Ours. He pulled back just far enough to look at me. His eyes were dry. Dad didn't cry easily, but the lines around his mouth were deep in a way they usually weren't. He'd been frightened. He was still frightened. And he was going to walk into that temple and stand between me and whoever needed standing between. And he was going to do it wearing his soldier's face and his father's heart simultaneously. I'll go with you when they call us in. And whatever they want, my answer's no. Whatever reasons they give, whatever they offer, no. But the moment that door shut, the devouring heat boiled up inside me. I never would have thought I'd pick something else over books. My entire life had been focused around books. Back in my Urano days, I would have chosen books instantly and cut myself off from my family, no matter the cost. And yet I hadn't been able to pick books here. My family had become just as important as books to me, but I'd finally found books. I couldn't pick them over my family, but I couldn't abandon them either. The pressure of being pinched between two desires made it hard to bottle up the heat. It took 2 full days to push it back down, only by finding a compromise. At least I could read the Bible in the High Bishop's room. Lutz came to check on me. "You're still looking sick. Benno wants to talk, but not today. I want to go to the temple tomorrow. I'll read the Bible and tell them I don't want to be a shrine maiden anymore. Then we'll go to Benno's." Apprentice shrine maiden? That's dumber than me wanting to be a traveling merchant. Aren't you the one who taught me not to charge ahead without thinking? His words stabbed my chest. He was right. I always stopped thinking when books got involved. "Worked out a compromise, huh?" He patted my head with a grin. "I didn't think you'd ever give in with books on the line. You did good." Once I recovered, Lutz and I went to the temple in our apprentice clothes. The high bishop was absent. Instead, the high priest greeted me, tall, slender, pale blue hair to his shoulders, light gold eyes, face like a carved statue, revealing no emotion. "The high bishop requested I read the Bible to you." He sat me on his lap so I could see the pages while he could stop me from touching them. Beautifully written letters covered yellowed parchment. I inhaled the scent of old paper and sighed in admiration. I started pointing at words I recognized and reading them aloud while the amused high priest taught me their meanings. "You are a fast learner. Are you perhaps of noble blood?" "Definitely not." A shame. When the high bishop returned, I told him my parents had refused. He slumped in disappointment. The high priest explained that nobles also served in the temple. It wasn't just orphans. But I told them I was too weak for regular work, then mentioned my devouring. Both men shot out of their chairs. "The devouring?" The high priest rushed from the room and returned with the golden chalice from the chapel statue. "Please touch this." The second my fingers touched it, brilliant light blazed from the chalice. I yanked my hand back. The two men nodded at each other. "Myne, I would like to talk to your parents." He gave me a letter of invitation, essentially a summons. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. Things just got really bad really fast." The high bishop gave me a letter of invitation, essentially a summons I couldn't refuse. The date, 3rd bell, the day after tomorrow. "Lutz, thank you so much for coming." The moment I left the temple and saw Lutz at 5th bell, relief flooded through me. I jumped into his arms and hugged him. He stumbled but stayed upright. "What'd you do this time?" "I don't really know, but I think this is the biggest self-destruction I've ever done." Lutz patted my head and grinned. "Well, don't worry. Benno's waiting with a big smile and a bulging forehead vein." "Can I go home? I'm really tired." He told me to drag you there if I have to. I followed him to the Gilberta Company like a lamb to the slaughter. First, Corinna wanted to see my baptism outfit. Then Benno leaned forward. "Spit it all out. Everything that happened after you left Lutz." I told him everything. When I reached the book room, he was surprised. When I mentioned going to the high bishop, he pinched my cheeks. When I said I'd offered a large gold donation, he held his head in pain. "That price is so stupidly high, I don't even know what to say. But they treated me really well thanks to it." Obviously. Then I told him about the devouring reveal and the glowing chalice. Benno rubbed his temples. "You're stuck with them now. Just be glad you get to survive. You're lucky." He explained what I didn't know. Blue-robed priests were nobles. Gray-robed were orphans working as unpaid servants. If I joined as a non-noble, I'd be gray. That's why Dad was furious. He explained the devouring, the state where someone loses control of the man inside them. I had mana, like a noble. The political purges across the country had killed many nobles. Those forced into temples were flooding back to their families. The temple was losing blue-robed priests, normally over 20, now about 10, and losing the manna needed for the spring blessing ceremony that affected crop harvests. A devouring kid overflowing with manna was extremely valuable to them right now. You have manna, money, and knowledge worth even more money. Wake up and realize how much nobles are going to want you. Benno proposed a new magic contract, that products I made would be sold through Lutz. If you get dragged past the inner wall, commoners need permission to cross it. Your family won't be able to visit. But if we have a magic contract requiring Lutz to sell your products, that's an excuse for him and me to see you. Not even nobles can defy contract magic. Through Lutz, you can send letters and messages to your family. I looked at Lutz. We made eye contact and nodded. Won't this put Lutz in danger? I asked. You're not in a situation light enough to worry about others. Mr. Benno, why are you going this far for me? I'm not even your apprentice. The longer you survive, the more new products you can make. If I keep my store connected to you, that's profit for me. That's all there is to it. He furrowed his brows, and Mark laughed softly behind him. The master is merely worried about you. You are always putting yourself in danger and causing unexpected problems. It is truly poor for our health. Apprentices here learn trade fundamentals at home, so the master had not met a child he needed to care for so dearly before now. I will refrain from saying you are like a daughter to him, but you are like the daughter of a brother. Thank you, Mr. Mark. Benno spat. Why Mark? Mark and I looked at each other and laughed. Thank you too, Mr. Benno. I'm really grateful to you both, and I'll do it. I'll sign the magic contract and register the workshop with the guild. Benno listed what we needed before the temple got hold of me. Register the Myne workshop. Keep an avenue for making money. Negotiate with the temple from a position of strength. Remember that the life of a commoner means nothing to nobles. Prepare as many escape routes as possible. Find a noble in the temple you can use for mutual benefit rather than being exploited one way. Look carefully. Pick carefully. Think carefully. Flail as hard as you can to survive.